nothing from me. Nah,
It still works.
you ain't taking nothing from me.
It works. Yeah, I don't need a new one yet.
Yo, what's goody? Live, what's happening, man? We about to get it going, man. We're gonna get some music bumping. Peace. What's up, man? Join in, man. We're gonna let that H.O.L.L.A Justice Movement album by the Youth Organizing Collective bump for a couple of minutes until we get ready to 12. But lock in.
That's what I will see. And when it's time.
I always knew that I'd find a way. I need the money like right away. Deep in the trenches, blood like extensions, flooding the streets like a tidal wave. All of the shit that we seen, and all of the shit in between. Watching our families turning to fiends, and we on the block still serving the fiends. Cause money was low, it's all that we know. Pitch it and go, got to the top, no advances. Cut out the cancer, now I got ice like a Atlantis. I had to go beat the odds, I sleep in the car, but I gotta get mommy a mansion, yeah. Big Tony bring the bands in, yeah. 10 chains, diamond dancing, soon as I hit the light, got it down for the night. I was fly before the flight, sit calm for the night. Sit back, enjoy your life, yeah. Listen, I've been through a lot. I be tripping cause my temper is hot. Big body when I spin through the block. And you know we at war with the cops, yeah. I can remember the times I lost my heart to the grind, yeah. Try to get right on the squad and you gon' get hit with a bomb, yeah. All of this money and violence, I had to go form an alliance with some of the flies. Think we playing, come and try it. Staying ready for a right, whoa.
Man, I gotta go get it. Run away. Man, each and every day you know that I'm with it. Run away. Man, I gotta go get it. Run away. Man, each and every day you know that I'm with it.
Get in the race.
Man, I gotta go get it. Run away. Man, each and every day you know that I'm with it. Run away. Man, I gotta go get it. Run away. Man, each and every day you know that I'm with it.
Get in the race. Get in the race.
Right away. Too many dudes be talking that paper chase. All of your money was spent up on honeys and getting refreshed with Jordans on holidays. Yeah, I used to hit up the block, dumping at dudes, dipping from cops. Young getting money, just thinking it's funny till some of my dudes got pinched by the cops. Damn, up in the project at night, living that life. Summers was trick. Yeah, selling that crack to the fiend, was thinking I'm building a dream. Checking the scene, contour selling it in, battling alive, true coming in. Up in the building, I saw that your folks, your family, your circle, your women, children. Building the equity at night, watching with felonies ride. Yeah, stomach was growling and shit. I felt like a lion and shit. Yeah, trapped in a cage, building the rage, hitting the stage. Damn, how can I choose? Kids need the food, stick from this plate. Yeah, they needed it, man. Shit, man, I gotta go get it. Run away. Man, each and every day you know that I'm with it. Run away. Man, I gotta go get it. Run away. Man, each and every day you know that I'm with it. Man, I gotta go get it. Run away. Man, each and every day you know that I'm with it. Run away. Man, I gotta go get it. Run away. Man, each and every day you know that I'm with it.
Get in the race. Get in the race.
Pull up on the block, watch I pave the way. Cause I pray that it starts for a brighter day. Deep in my soul, staying composed. A lot of stay roll with the lighter stays. The family recovering, we wasn't slaves. So never had dreams, but they kids were safe. So why wouldn't I stumble? Why wouldn't I crumble? Please try to shoot me, watch a ricochet. The demons link out when the ink is sprayed. Might change your whole life when you flip the page. If I show you my wounds, will you feel the pain? Empathizing the trauma that I have gained. Yelling and crying while holding the blind and iron. This shit is not rocket science. What you know about organizing while you're open this stockpile? Friends never can't stop grinding. One day I gotta start smiling. Gotta show if you start crying. Gotta team me to start riding. See the legacy start rising. We gon' pass through a few horizons. We don't have to pay for air miles. Cause the universe is the pilot. Shit I rap like I'm emphasizing. My words will not be silent. Transformation of a thug. Man, I gotta go get it.
I need them duckers like right away. In the hood, I'm like, fuck it, I'll make a way. Pray for better days, I see why they hate. Cause I do my thing, rockin' new bomb X. Pull up in the U-Haul on Strand. To the K, I be praying, you know how it's land. Lyrics Picasso, I'm painting, I'm beating this case, no debating. 10K, what I'm paying, stay silent for violent. I ain't wanna say much. It's funny how people could change up. To be honest, I'm modest, don't phase us. Serving and swerving, I gotta go get it. Take K with the race, we gon' aim at your fitted. You pointing the snitch in the sand, who did it? This life that I'm living, I say for the children, so please be advised. I ride with my guys, 3 5s got me high, you see in my eyes. Chasing this chicken ball like Scottie Pippen, these writtens be tripping, you dancing for riches.
Man, I gotta go get it. Run away. Man, each and every day you know that I'm with it. Run away. Man, I gotta go get it.
each and every day, you know that I'm with it. Right away, right away, right away, right away.
I think it's time to paper chase, to paper chase. I think it's time, get in the race, get in the race.
If you give me 45 seconds, I'm going to show you how I generated almost $2 million in the past 2.5 years using a simple...
Same shit, different
I'm on that
day.
shit too.
Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Na na na.
I'm on that shit too.
Same shit, different day. Na 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 na. Same shit, different day. Na na na.
I'm on that shit too. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. I'm on that shit too.
Same shit, different day. Na 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 na. Same shit, different day. Na na na.
I'm on that shit too. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. I'm on that shit too. Reside in places other people go through shit too. We young and
Yo.
die night because that shit's cruel. Men, they don't hang and they don't bang me because that shit's cool. Dreams evaporate, let me elaborate. Since birthday giving me shit food. Socialize 3/4 of a man and put me in a grill of shit too. Told me pain is how you gain, how the whole world not against you. Cause everything you touch, you
Yo, Brittany, what's your IG? Send me your IG.
Line phase while I'm blowing haze. That's how we empower minds. Cointel trying to have a
Like 3 minutes from jump off.
But it's step before we drop a dime. I'm on that shit too.
Same shit, different day. Na 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 na. Same shit, different day. Na na na.
I'm on that shit too. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. I'm on that shit too.
Same shit, different day. Na 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 na. Same shit, different day. Na na na.
I'm on that shit too. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day.
I guess the D's on that shit too, cause black people dying, it's not an issue. It's never a problem to them, cause they don't want that shot, that pistol, it's a missile. Cause when you kill one, that shit ripples. They don't understand the shit that we already been through. It went from slavery to being someone free. Now all they doing is modifying shit into modern day. Slavery is full of scheme. I remember Martin had a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out its highest dream. That's what I believe. It's 2018.
I didn't even see it.
Take the yellow light off next to him now.
We vet. Where you at, Britt? That's you right there?
Usually people have two devices because one recording and one he's gonna be trying to tap.
Yo, we about to get lit, man.
How does it look clear?
Nah, that's too dark, right?
I know what he's doing.
We lit. My son just, shout out to my son and my wife. They just got me studio ready. I'm glowing in the dark. I'm glowing in here. We might need to publish this for real.
I don't know. I don't think you should have sat on the floor though. Just sit on the table. I mean, not the table. Sit on the chair and put the light on the stool. You didn't.
I like it all.
Which one do you like better?
Let me see that. Pass me that iPad too. What's good, man? Yo, Britt, man, where you at, man? Gary, see you.
This is a matcha cookie.
From where?
Sylvia, I see you. What's good?
It's chocolate and matcha.
Organized Unity, see you. I see y'all. Ebony, see you. Bruce, see you. We just trying to get Brittany on. Once we get Brittany on, we ready to go. Brittany, join the live. I see you in the building. Ask to join the live. Okay. Okay, I see you, B. I see you. So good morning, good afternoon.
Okay, I'm
Shout out
here.
Britt. What's good? Ooh, Lily, our dog is helping organize the studio with me. What's good, Britt? What's
What's
good,
going on?
family?
What's happening?
Thanks all of the people for tuning in so far, man. We are on H.O.L.La's link all together. IG Live. H.O.L.La started in prison supporting the healing and liberation of young people and our older people in our communities impacted by historical trauma. I'm Cory Greene, one of the co-founders of H.O.L.La from Queens, New York, hailing from Mississippi. So thanks everybody for coming in. We got my big sister, little sister on the phone too. And Mississippi is in the building. And I met Brittany a couple of years back in a training. And I felt like we just been having small and little and big and different conversations about healing, about Black people, about organizing. So it's a blessing to kind of like just be holding space with her in public too as well. So Britt was good.
What's going on?
You
So,
want to tell the people a little bit about who you are, give them some spirit about where you coming from?
of course, of course. Um, so I am Brittany Gray. I am from the Mississippi Delta, Greenwood, Mississippi. A place that I definitely hold near and dear to my heart. There's a lot of movement building here, a history of movement building and resiliency here in the state of Mississippi that hails right here in the Mississippi Delta. So I like to rely on that spirit to enforce the work that I do. There's a lot of, when I think about organizing, my role as an organizer, there's a lot of building within community. There's a lot of building within the political sector, labor, and at the core of all of it is being truthful and making sure that we're holding space to learn and to heal and to grow in this process. And so, any way that I can do that to create that, I'm doing it here in the Delta. So, yeah. And I met Cory about, ooh, what was it? 6 years ago, to be to be exact. And we had a pretty dope conversation. We were both reading books at the time, different books, and he brought bell hooks into my life in a way, Sisters of the Yam. And it has been a part of my daily meditation since. And so I really have embodied a lot of the practices that were discussed in terms of self recovery. And I hold that true in all of the work that I do and make sure that we're holding each other accountable. So I am just as grateful for our relationship, meeting in that training in New York and
No question.
continuing to build. So yeah.
Nah, thanks, man. Nah, definitely that Sisters of the Yam book by Bell Hooks is so meaningful, and so small, but so impactful, and a lot of that was a dope time in my life too, 6 years ago, because I was just like trying to figure out like what does healing like really mean for me. You know, like what do I gotta grow through? What do I gotta learn? What skills I need to develop? Like what stuff I need to stop ignoring? And everything from how the yam is so important to Black people and so important to the medicinal wellness of Black people, to the ideas around like dismantling a system of lies, to really thinking about how you get well for your individual self before you can be able to take care, or as you taking care of other folks. All of those things were so important. And those things kind of woke me up to like, you know, this conversation today is going to be, we're going to just vibe. But I definitely want to use the documentary, We Came to Heal, that was created by the Youth Organizing Collective of H.O.L.La and Phelan Jones. Shout out to Kieran in the building, Alex, Mashley, Butterlab, Shaq, A-Rocks, Phil. and all of the YLC folks at H.O.L.L.A and our ancestors. But this documentary, We Came to H.O.L.L, really captures the last 4 years of H.O.L.La's grassroots organizing work and a practice of trying to heal with themselves that lead to a lot of community healing, and really trying to show community what we have been doing and what we've been going through, and to kind of like think about how we get outside and start healing with our communities. So I just, I've watched the documentary 100 times. When it came out June 28th on our YouTube channel, H.O.L.L.A TV, I've been watching a lot more, just kicking it with the followers and the community. I'm just building it. But I want this pass it to you to kind of first say like what you want to share about the documentary to like the viewers, like what came out for you, and then we're just going to use that to kind of like keep having a conversation.
Okay. So I've been sending Cory pictures because I have had a host of watching sessions in my living room with several folks because the documentary to me really resonates with the work that we're trying to do in the Delta. One of the things that really stood out to me the most is really making sure that youth have the space to be as creative as they want to be. As I'm listening to the beats drop, the songs are, they're very catchy. They're all driven by young people, right? And I think that that's the most powerful thing from the video, from the documentary, is that H.O.L.L.A has created a space for young people to be themselves, right? To hold true to whatever it is that they have going on, to allow that to resonate in their work. Many of the lyrics really hit home, and it's a way for people to channel their own creativity positively, right? And to help others during that process. Here in the Delta, we have a lot of young people who they make music videos. They are just as creative, but what they're talking about is is the problem, And so figuring out ways to allow folks to channel different energy and allow them to heal in their process, right? While they're speaking their truth is important, right? And so I really love the soundtrack of the documentary as all of the as everything dropped. I was really jamming the whole way through. But I allowed folks to come in to really see the documentary because sometimes folks, when you're not directly impacted by something, you kind of gloss over it and you're like, oh, that's not a thing that impacts me or whatever, or affects me. And so I think that this allowed people to humanize formerly incarcerated folks, also to see young people who have been a part of the system and to create the change that they wanted to see after coming out. And so I think that that's important, that folks understand a little bit more about redemption, right? And how we control our own narrative. And so I think that this was very important. As I've been watching the documentary 18 different times, I've jotted down a lot of things. And I think one of the most powerful pieces was a question that was posed by, let me make sure I get his name right, Dr. Kim Wright. And it's, how are we allowing our humanity and love to show up, right? And I think that that's key in all of the work that we do, that it has to be selfless. It has to be rooted in the spirit of love.
Can you say that question again? Say that question again for us.
It's, how are we allowing our humanity and love to show up? And I think that that's important in all of the work that we do. I think as Black folks, we struggle with each other all the time, but it's going to be our love for the people that really allows us to sustain this line of work. But I think that humanity question is powerful, right? Because when we think about, and I was telling you the other day, I'm like, oftentimes I say, man, I've lost all faith in humanity, right? And it's more so to me now about what does that restoration process look like for us? And especially as Black folks and people of color trying to work and build together collectively, what does that look like? What does the restoration look like? Because a lot of folks are feeling a sense of hopelessness. A lot of folks do feel as if humanity is a thing of the past. And so, what do we do to change that? And Dr. Kim Wright also talked about shifting more so from a more transactional to transformative framework in terms of building those relationships, building relationships. And they have to be from that transformative lens. And so, I think the documentary on all levels really spoke to me. Marlon Peterson had a comment where he said, we often, it's hard for us to love publicly, right? We often love privately. So we got to get to loving more publicly, right? And I think that that's going to inform a lot of the work that we're doing when we are really thinking about how we connect with each other, how we have to put aside the differences and things like that, and just deal out of love with everything. And so I thought the documentary, everybody that's come in, we learned a lot. Folks are taking notes, and I think it's going to be that we're doing here. Hold on, you kind of
That
breaking
was
up,
a
Cory.
lot of the documentary
Okay.
and a lot of H.O.L.A work, but particularly those back. Nah, thanks for sharing that, man. I
Yeah,
feel
you
like
back.
a lot of what you were saying was talking about the interpersonal relationships and how we heal with each other. And yeah, we can ask each other questions. I don't know how we want to do this all the way, or we just want to build. But like, I think in the documentary, like me personally, I had a lot of reflections on stuff that went on with me and my mother, and how her own experience and how that experience in our community, how that shaped and played a role in me and my mother relationship. I know Mashley, one of our youth organizers, Alex, Shaq, and other folks, A-Rocks talked about their fathers and their parents. So I think, I know for us, we really spend a lot of time thinking about like to that point about Sean's question, like how do we allow our humanity and love to show up? But I think another part of that question is like, particularly with people that you love, but also with people who probably hurt you. Also with people you don't really trust all that much, or people that you love and you trust, but in certain moments you don't really trust them or you can't trust them. Or on top of that, like when you don't trust yourself, or when you don't really know all of your possibilities, or you don't trust all of your possibilities. So I think that question that Sean was asking, I think in general, it's a big question. Like, how do we let our humanity love show up, particularly in our interpersonal relationship? But it's really responding to also like with all of that out of it too, with all of the historical force and all of the dynamics inside of it. How do you still find who you are to like figure that out? But I want to throw that back to you, just in that kind of context of thinking about like what does that question mean for you, or but for some of our young people or some of our community members, but thinking about some of the stuff that comes with it.
Yeah, I think it's a total acknowledgement of the truth, right? And being able to name that, right? When the documentary started off, you shared a lot of personal things about your mother, right? And one of my homeboys, I know that he had a very similar experience growing up. And so even as we were talking throughout the documentary, he was saying, yeah, he grew up in Detroit and later moved to Greenwood. And so he was saying, the drug pandemic really like crippled his family. And we talked about it led to a conversation about mental illness, the suicide of his sister. And these were things that we hang out all the time, right? But I had never heard, right? And so I think that sometimes when people see other people acknowledging their own truths, it makes them more comfortable, which leads me back to something that Dr. Kim Wright stated, was that when my humanity shows up, it gives permission for others to do the same. And so I think that as we're having conversations about, really talking and acknowledging our own truth, we have to know that it's not going to be comfortable. It's not going to be cute. It's not going to be, everybody's not going to handle it the same way. Everybody is not going to address it, because then they'll have to realize that they've been a complicit in the problem as well, right? And so it's something that I think really getting to the root of ourselves is an open acknowledgement of who we are, our experiences, the trauma that lingers. We hold on to that, and especially a lot of Black women, we try to mask it, right? We put up a facade to hide from these things, to separate us from the truth. And until we really get down to it and acknowledge what has hurt us, even if the person that has hurt us doesn't want to assume any kind of responsibility, we have to know what to do with it and how to continue to operate out of love for that person, right? Understanding that one of the things that I've always, and I think since about 2011, I really had to go back and realize that some of the things, even for instance with my parents, right? A person can't give you what they don't know, right? They can't give you what they didn't have, right? And so a lot of things, resentment and feelings that I had towards folks stem from the fact that sometimes you just don't know, or you just didn't have it to pass it on. And so we have to be able to deal with that, allow that to resonate with our spirits, to get us to a place in which we can then begin to continue to move, right? And so I think the documentary, for me, when we talk about that humanity piece, is definitely acknowledging the truth and learning how to deal with all of the mess that comes with it, and being okay with it, right? And even when we're not okay, being able to express that, right? Openly and freely, but realizing that we're not really operating in isolation of other folks or whatever. Everybody's pretty much going through the same thing, but it's about being comfortable enough to share those truths. And that it makes the work a little uncomfortable, because you got a lot of folks that don't walk in their own truth, and so you're like, dang, like I got to deal with this, but it's helping other folks to uncover that, right? And when you do that, you feel good. You feel better about yourself. You feel better about the work. You can pour more into it, right? And so, yeah, I think.
But I find, like, to me, like, healing is so much fun to me, and so much hard work, and like I'm like just always trying to learn, and as I'm learning, journeying, and I'm getting more deeper into having fun with healing, and I'm also understanding how hard it is, At first, I was just in a space like, damn, healing is just about, like, all I gotta do is tell my story. Oh shit! All I gotta do is get my truth out. Like, which was hard at first. You a dude, you formerly incarcerated, you've been shamed so much in your life. You've been socialized where, like, expressing don't really matter. So you feel like, why the fuck I'm doing that? But then, I got some leadership. I seen some elders. I got a little help. I'm like, all I gotta do is now just get that out, And then as I started getting that out, and as I started sharing that, I started to learn that like even sharing your truth, like, it might be good for you, but it might not be good for somebody else. And like, for to be more specific, like, I think for this documentary, we all in H.O.L.A and YLC shared a lot of stories about ourselves that was really personal to us, but it was related to, like, people we journey with, our moms, our sisters, each other. And for each individual, we all on our individual healing journey, even though we cousins, brothers, in different places where we how we make sense of the world, and where we journey in that, and how we make sense of the world, how that informs where we journey into. But for some people, like, and for a lot of Black families, and just a lot of, like, patriarchal society, like, a lot of stuff we go through, you just need to hold that down. Just keep that to yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't be sharing that out there like that. Like we don't practice, like, family that way. You know what I'm saying? Our society of patriarchy, our, like, society of, like, being shamed too much. Like, however you ever want to slice it, it don't make sense for us to give it out to the world like that, or give it to anybody like that. So I also feel the balance or the tension and the struggle and the hurt sometimes. Like when
Mm-hmm.
like you trying to like express that humanity or express that, but sometimes people humanity that you're expressing it about or just in the world is at different places. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so what does that mean? Like when you expressing your humanity in relationship with the world who got many versions of that humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And more concrete, to keep going a little bit more concretely, I felt like a lot of healing happened by us in H.O.L.L.A and YLC sharing some things that we have worked through and we feel confident enough to share.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also learning that like when you don't journey with your intimate relationships in certain way, your moms, your cousins, if they haven't came to that realization with you or you haven't arrived there together,
Mm-hmm.
like I don't know if healing didn't happen, but I feel like it's still a lot of coding and healing to figure out, because that might be good for you, but that brings up all kinds of stuff for them.
Stuff for them, right?
As far as shame, like why are you doing this on YouTube? As far as like I didn't even get my words out. That ain't like I didn't even figure out how to come to that conclusion or how to come to my own understanding. And I think yeah, I know there's a large conversation the last whatever 30-40 years about like healing and all that's about speaking your truth, speaking truth to power, all of this stuff. And I think that's the truth to that. And I think there's also a lot of conversation about intersectionality and about like how we show up in relationship to who we in relationship with, in relationship to the world. So yeah, I'm just throwing that back in the pot because I was feeling some of that with like the humanity, like for some people they need to get that out, like yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but for some people they can't hear that, you know, like so how do we show up, like how do our humanity, how do we negotiate all that, you know? I don't know if you got any questions for that, but that was just something that came up. And I just throw that to the IG folks. Maybe y'all got some answers, but like when we healing, like how do we always keeping our individual journeys and conversations with our historical and family journeys, you know? And how do we think about that question that Denright, our big brother from the Bay Area, you know, teaches about, like how do we keep our humanity grounded in that process as well? And with love too, you know, that's a lot of work.
Man, that's a whole lot of work. But and I think that's where a lot of the burnout comes from, right? When you're consistently dealing with that. But I think it's more of an incremental change, right? That happens, and you have to truly be invested, right? And I think that there's a lot of sacrifice that has to come with this line of work in terms of healing. And the key is to be as selfless as possible. I think for when I think about a lot of the work in community building, one of the things that comes to my mind is just dispelling the notion of individualism, right? And until people put themselves aside and say, this is bigger than me, I'm willing to delve in, even though this doesn't have anything to do with me. You may not have children, but you may be invested in education because you care about the education of the children in your neighborhoods or in your local communities or your state or whatever level you're on, right? So sometimes it's bigger than you. I got a dog, but I'm going to go to all of the meetings about the children, the young people I welcome to come into my space. I had 3 beautiful little girls here last night until about 11. And by the time they left, I was like, yeah, this is not my thing, but you know, it's a thing, right? And so I think we just have to really allow ourselves to know that it's bigger than us. Like, and if we want to really be effective and help each other get through a lot of the trauma and push through and work together, we have to realize that it's not about us. And one of the things that when I moved back to the Delta in 2017, after having lived in other states and worked in different spaces, I moved back. One of the things that I realized was that all of my childhood friends pretty much lived in other places. And so it was more so like, how do I connect back to this space that I've been gone from for over 14 years? And so and I would hang out with some of my homeboys, you know, and I was always like just the only woman in the group. And so as I started engaging with more women in town, I realized that women were dealing with a lot of issues, right? And a lot of it stemmed from not being real with themselves, right? And not being truthful about what was actually ailing them, right? And so and I know that that's something that I've dealt with before, right? And continue to deal with in certain instances. And so one of the things that I started last year in April was a sisters healing circle, and it's just a space. I mean, it's right here in the living room. The living room is pretty comfortable, so we get together once a month. We've been doing a little more virtually and outside. You know, having a little turn up outside occasionally now during the pandemic, but we get together. We engage in more of a around the full moon to have our own full moon ritual and affirm a lot of things. But we share a lot of intimate interpersonal stories just so that we know that we're not dealing with things in isolation, right? And this group of women, we were from all different walks of life, never really connected. The more that the more meetings that we had, the larger that they got. And I can say that we've truly built a network of just pure love, community, fellowshipping. We have and I mean it's so supportive where we support each other's businesses. We've created we've allowed ourselves to be a part of the more creative economy, especially during this pandemic. Folks are really tapping into their creative energy and creating different lines, product lines, and different things like that. So we support each other to help each other build the wealth in our circle. We also support each other's children. We got children that play basketball, different sports, and we're at the games. We're, you know, if somebody needs a ride, somebody's in the hospital, parents are sick, whatever. Like we've just created a space in which we can really lean on each other, but also do it out of love and pure understanding, right? And so I think that that space is needed in every community. That space doesn't have to be dictated by one person and controlled by one person. I think it's definitely a collective effort. And I don't know what my experience in Greenwood, Mississippi, after living in major cities and coming back would be without these sisters. I can truly say that. And so the love is there. It's very genuine. We talk every day. We have our own group messages. We're checking in, making sure that we're good. If we're not good, we're going to create space. Come on over. I'm coming over to you, whatever the case may be. And so I think that anything that we do has to be rooted in love. And I can't say that enough, because sometimes we allow the personal things to kind of blind us, right? And stop us from doing things. There were women in the group that didn't have the best of relationships prior to being in the group. These are things that we have worked on, and when I tell you, love prevails every time. And
That's
so
what.
I think that. Mhm.
Can you hear
Go
me?
ahead. I hear you. Hold on. You're off. Okay.
Yeah. I didn't mean to jump in, but some of the beef we be having, or the ideas we be having about each other, wasn't the best with each other. But my question I want to ask to you, the kind of like, and I could jump in too, but like, what did y'all actually do? Or like, how do you actually start, like, make the first circle happen, or the first gathering happen that turned into some of these flowers? Like, how do you step into some of that not happening? You the only sister back in Greenwood. Like, how do anybody, or how do our communities kind of step into some of this a little bit more to try to bring us into our living rooms a little bit, you know, with all of this stuff around that kind of like don't make it as easy to kind of like get into our living room to have some of this real conversation with each other.
And and I think it's that it goes back to being able to acknowledge that, okay, maybe I used to operate from that same lens, right? Where I wasn't being truthful with myself. But being truthful is a very liberating feeling, right? And so I want other folks to feel that, right? I want other people to have that same experience and to be able to live as freely. A lot of people say, "Oh, Brittany's a free spirit. She's gonna do this and she's gonna do that." I live my life the way I want to live it. Whatever my motto is, do whatever makes your soul happy, right? And so I try to spread that spirit to everybody. And so one of the first session that we had about 8 folks, and it was just more so, come over, we love in the South, people of color, we love this fellowship over food, right? And so that's something, that's our love language, right? And so one of the things that I would do is say, hey, we're gonna have a bottle of wine, everybody bring a snack that's shareable, and we just kind of jumped into it, you know, just women just getting in the space, period, right? Sometimes we're not comfortable enough to be around this person, or we don't know this person. And so it's more so of breaking the ice, you know, just telling folks to link up. And we went around and we talked about who we were and how long we've been in town, and, you know, a lot of the things, our common interests and things like that. And it kind of conversation what the needs are that folks had during that first session, and we knew that we needed to continue to do. I think it's just as simple as saying, hey, come on over, let's get together, let's talk. And folks that came, they would then invite someone else, you know. And like I said, it would be someone that I did not know. My home is a very welcoming space. Whoever wants to come over, the living room, Cory, you've been here, the living room is where it's at, you know. I mean, and so it's about creating that safe space where people feel like they can come somewhere. You're not going to judge them or anything like that, and allowing people to be themselves, you know. And so I think that once we create that space, and once people see that you live your life a certain way, right, they feel more comfortable, right? They feel like, hey, this is who she is, and I can be, you know, in the mix or whatever. So I think it's all about just creating space and holding that space down, right? Like where people feel that they're just comfortable and they're welcome. A lot of times we're not welcome. We're not welcome in a lot of spaces. We're not. I wear t-shirts and sweats and shit all the time, and so I was in the mayor's office asking a question. They're looking at me with the side eye, like, why are you here? You know, just last week. And so a lot of times we're not welcome. And a lot of times we shun our own folks, right? We shun folks that look like us. We don't welcome them into the fold, right? And so in order for us to build, we gotta have our arms open. Because one thing about us is that we need a united front. We're gonna have to have everybody with us, you know. And so in order for us to win and to really win collectively, right? So it's just that spirit of being open to the unknown, being open to you know, different experiences that you haven't had. I've learned so much from this group of women that I've learned from a lot of folks that have been in my circle, right? And so we really have to take our blinders off sometimes, you know.
So shout out to Mississippi, man, and Greenwood, Mississippi at that, man. Delta is in the building. That's where you talking about all that work at, right?
Greenwood.
Greenwood. Now I was thinking, just to that point there, like I kind of said it in the documentary, but I think like the world we live in and like the homes we live in, the community we live in, kind of a lot of what you were saying there. To me, I kind of understand a lot of that those words and that analysis you was laying are really kind of like not just the material idea of a safe and brave space, but like the spiritual and emotional connection that like, yo, I'm in a different place. Like, and it's not just like, oh, we got the chart paper, but it's like they see your consistency. They see the space consistency. They see the spirit show up more than once. So they're like, oh, this is a spirit. You know what I'm saying? This is something different. But part of what I'm learning is that like, or what I'm thinking I'm learning is that like, and I said in the documentary that like when somebody like to get somebody's shame is a deep gift in the world we live in, but probably even before the last thousands of years, just thinking about indigenous and Afrocentric kind of like wisdom and cosmology, like to get a piece of somebody that is raw, that is not all the way cooked, but particularly thinking about the world we live in today, it feels like a gift, and so yesterday I was on a phone call with a brother too, and he was explaining to me and going into some conversations about stuff that he was dealing with, personally, professionally, gender-wise, and a lot of his expression, he was really just being accountable and sharing shame. And for Black men, and particularly for formerly incarcerated Black men, but let alone Black people, Black women, Black humans, like you don't really leadership and show. I don't really see a lot of us in most of my life take leadership on facilitating your shame with folks. You know what I'm saying? Let me break this down to you. Let me show you how I messed up. Let me show you where I'm at. Let me show you how I feel. And like I'm learning today, kind of like what you were saying, that like when somebody do that, I'm actually receiving a gift. I'm actually receiving something that like a lot of people probably don't get. A lot of people probably like won't have the opportunity to like dive into. So one thing I'm saying with that is like what's your responsibility when I don't know if shame is the right word, but when somebody's sharing something that like the world could shame them for, or something that is hard for, or something that like that uplifts guilt and tension, like when you hear that, like what is your role? Like going back to the love part, like even if it's somebody that hurts you, or even if somebody that don't know, like when you see shame showing up, when you see somebody is actually bringing guilt to the conversation, like what does that mean for your own humanity? And then I'm asking, like Alex, another thing, going back to your point about truth. Alex in the documentary, and like he was all calm with it in a documentary, but he was like, yo, truth, you know what I'm saying? He was like, truth is healing. He was like some truth is good truth, and some truth is bad truth. Like some stuff you probably don't want to hear, or you don't want to digest it. But regardless of what, you know, whether it's good or bad, you know, it's healing. But I think that relates back to my point that I was mentioning earlier, that everybody can't hold your truth, or so I don't know what that means, like all the way. I know truth is healing, but I also know everybody is in a different place of getting truth. You know what I'm saying? So just throwing that back to all of us out there to keep us thinking. Any questions, any comments? But that was coming up for me, thinking about shame and thinking about, like, to your point, like the reason why people don't share some of our tensions and some of our guilts, some of the way the world beat us up, I think, because I feel why I don't do it, and what I see is because like that force of like being shamed, being kicked out your own family, let alone the world, being Black, but like your own family, your own is hurtful. And when you Black and you've been like son and undocumented and queer, and you've been pushed out so much, there's only but so much you could take. You feel like the next push out might be your last one. The next time somebody ignore you might be the last time. The next time somebody can't hear your truth might be the last thing you could hold. So you are always treading light, like, I can't really share that with this person. I like this person. I think I know them, but I don't really want to give them that because I don't want to, I don't know how much more I got of like relationships left. You know, so just thinking about I feel like, I don't know what that means for us, because I feel like, you gotta like be real and show up, but also when you be real and show up, some people ain't ready to receive that. Some people ain't got the love in them to receive that too, or really not practicing love.
Right.
So yeah.
And I think that, like I said, that's some incremental change over time, because
Talk
every
about it.
time that we have our circle, right, we would write down three things. We write down three things that we want to get rid of, that we want to release, right? We write it down. You're free to share what those three things are, and we kind of unpack that, and then you burn your paper, right? We're releasing it. We're getting rid of it. And so several women during their first couple of times, they didn't really they just wanted to go ahead and burn their paper. And we created that space where it was perfectly fine for them to do that. But as they started to see, because we have the tears, we got the laughs, it's an emotional roller coaster in the living room. But it created a space in which people were able to be more comfortable, right? Where they saw other people releasing their own fears, things that they had anxiety about, different challenges into the new moon or whatever, and so things about shame and guilt, 99% of the time we've all dealt with that same a very similar instance, right? And so when you talk about the push out, right, the push out starts early. It starts early, and we've gotten to be so conditioned to the push out. I was speaking to a cousin of mine a couple of years, about 2 years ago. They told me that her job required her to be at work at 6 a.m. And she had a daughter that was, I think, about 11 or 12 at the time, who was responsible for getting herself ready to get on the bus, right? And to go to school. Your parent is away at 6 a.m., so now this is your responsibility. Most kids are, they may want to lay around or whatever, but she missed the bus one day. Didn't have a cell phone, didn't have a home phone. And so she said, well, I put her out because she just stayed at home all day and didn't go to school. And so, in my mind, I was thinking, wow, that's crazy, right? 11 or 12-year-old, you put them out. Like, that push out starts early and earlier, right? And it was through that conversation that I just started to talk to her and say, well, she doesn't have a cell phone, she didn't have a home phone. What were your expectations? So sometimes we have to go back and really ask ourselves, why did we have such a high expectation for whatever the case may be or whatever? But what leads us to the push out? I've been pushed out, if I didn't make it home my senior year in high school by 12 a.m., it might be 12:10, 12:15. They got the gate closed. You go back to wherever you came from. The push out starts early, and so we have to be able to identify that hurt that you felt, how you dealt with that hurt, to be able to have those conversations with folks as they feel that they may be dealing with different issues, or they may have been pushed out. We have to go back and say, well, I had this experience and this is how I felt. We have to be able to have those conversations about what being pushed out looks like. And unfortunately, it is happening earlier and earlier. And so we've been conditioned, some of us have been conditioned to think that this is normal, right? We've normalized the push out. And so how do we challenge that? How do we reverse that way of thinking? And I think that that's important for us to always consider, whether it be push out, whether it be some in-home drama, family trauma, whatever the case may be. We have to think about the fact that 9 times out of 10, if we're being really truthful with ourselves, right, we've experienced something very similar, right? We've held those same emotions. And so just creating a common interest, a common conversation, a conversation of common interest and hurt, and talk about the pain. Because if I know that you've dealt with something, you may be able to help me with whatever I'm going through, or whatever the case may be. And so until we can get to that point, which is still a basic acknowledgement of the truth, right, and get in tune with our emotions, right, we gotta know. And I often tell people, I have some friends and family that may think They don't check in. They don't say, "Hey, how you doing?" You know, when you text me, you say, "Peace, what's good? Everything, how you feeling?" You know, we have to be more intentional about that as well, right? Because for folks who operate in their own truth, it almost seems as if we don't have those feelings and those emotions. Like we're not affected by much because we are operating a little differently than most folks, right? And so, but I like to be checked on. I like for people to ask me how I'm doing intentionally, right? And that doesn't often happen, right? And so I've been actually reflecting on that and doing some work with another sister who kind of feels the same way, breaking down how that feels, what it feels like to be, you know, a very re- when folks rely on you or need you, but what do you do when you need someone else, right? And so we've been kind of unpacking that the last few weeks, and so I think that there's a lot for us to do in terms of just creating a space in which we're being as open and transparent as possible and holding each other accountable, right? I do have friends that check me, right? And I say that like we have to, um, you know, the emotions that we wear on our sleeves, we have to get rid of those sometimes, because there may be a real chin check, you know, to make sure that you're good, right? To make sure that you're um, doing what you need to do and truly embodying your own truth at all times. And so I like to be accountable. I like for folks to hold me accountable to that, right? And I have some really powerful sisters and brothers that do that, right? And so I think that that's a part of our duty, not our role. That's our duty. That's our responsibility as humans, right? Um, to check in, make sure we good, make sure
Yep.
that you know we're in a good space because it's things that can trigger us that we're not even conscious of, right? That can take us to a whole different place. And so we have to be truthful about that because it shows up. It shows up in every relationship, right? It shows up and it can haunt you. It you know, I think about, you know, the relationship that I have with my father. It is what it is, but it ain't all good, period, you know. And so I know that the way that I perceive him shows up in relationships, right? And so I have to sit with that and deal with that. And I also know that there are other people that are dealing with that as well. So we have to rap about it. We gotta get through it together, you know. Um, so it's definitely it's you know this work is it's never ending. I say it's life's work because um, every day is something different, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. But I know that my schedule is contingent on not only me and my feelings, but the feelings of other folks around me, right? And so some days I say, well, how did my schedule get this stacked up, or how did I have this many conversations? You know, and you know it kind of rearranges things. But we got to be able to sacrifice some time. We got to be able to sacrifice our energy and love for one particular thing to encompass everybody and everything around us. So
Nah, that was beautiful, man. I see some comments talking about responding to your analysis, talking about like our historical experience, like makes being vulnerable like seem like a weak
hmm
thing. And then the person also said like we gotta like help each other learn that vulnerability is strength.
definitely,
So if you want to
definitely,
say anything to that, or um,
def- definitely. I I have a saying, you know, I'm not soft, you know, I'm not soft. And so I really feel like I have some friends that when they see me share some emotions or if I start to cry or something, they're like, wait a minute, who is that? You know, and so I do know that that is something that I've had to work on vulnerability because you need that just like you need that humanity. We have to show ourselves to be